Welcome again, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matthew. And next we're going to talk about English-style brown ales. Now, English-style brown ales have a very, very long and rich history, as do most types of European beers. They can be divided into several subcategories, including Northern English brown ales and Southern English brown ales. But in general, the style is derived out of a traditional English pale ale, with the addition of some caramel and chocolate malts, which gives it a darker color, hence the name brown ale, and also gives it some darker flavors, if you will, notes of chocolate, coffee, nuts, things of that nature. Now, this specific brewery, or beer that we're going to be talking about, is Sam Smith's Nut Brown Ale.
Yeah, that's right. Samuel Smith's Nut Brown. It's from England. It's actually an interesting little tidbit about Samuel Smith Brewery is almost all of their beers, with the exception of two, are organic. They're suitable for vegetarians and even vegans. So that's kind of a cool little selling point on them. But the brewery is old, to say the least. It started in 1758. Then in 1886, Samuel Smith was actually the one that inherited the brewery and changed it to Samuel Smith's Brewery in 1886. But it goes back all the way to 1758. And actually, the well that they use for their water is said to be the same well that was dug in 1758. So they're using that same water that comes from the aquifer, from the well down there. Like Matthew said, it's an English style, and it's basically a English style pale ale that uses a different type of malt, right?
Yep. And despite the fact that it says nut brown ale on it, it's actually not brewed with nuts. The nuts are actually just a natural flavor that's indicative of the types of malt that they use.
All right, now let's get this one into a glass. Now, I think because it's an English style brown ale, it's not going to be very hoppy.
No, generally speaking not. They tend to be more malt forward with some residual sweetness. However, I don't think I would ever describe them as a sweet beer per se. Now this one clocks in at 5%, which is absolutely appropriate for the style.
How big are these bottles? These are kind of weird.
Despite the shape, they are actually just 12-ounce bottles.
Oh, wow.
Now you'll notice they have the gold foil on the top, which Sam Smith does for the majority of their beers. Gives them a lot of brand recognition. Sam Smith has been imported to the United States for a number of years, and has been appreciated by more sophisticated American palates for a number of decades.
Yeah, in the middle of the middle to late, the 1960s and 70s, when especially the 70s, when Samuel Smith was really, really exported with vigor into the United States. I know that because there was such a lack of good craft beer in the U.S. at that time, that a lot of people, when they wanted flavor, turned to imports instead of American craft beer. That industry didn't exist. So it was all about imports. And Samuel Smith was one of the first big imports in the United States that really taught a lot of people that maybe there was something more to this beer thing.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this one as we start to evaluate it. And you can see straight away that there's a really nice, rich, kind of tawny, almost chestnut type of color to it. Touches of red, orange, copper, amber. It's really, really nice and brilliantly polished and clear.
Very clear is what I
noticed.
noticed.
It's a result of sterile filtration on this. I can see clean through the glass. Really a very, very good looking beer. Slightly, almost like a toasted nut on the top. Very kind of a creamy, well-developed head. You can see we've got pretty decent head retention and lacing here, which is also indicative of the style. So let's go ahead and stick our nose in this one and see what comes out.
Wow, a lot of sweetness.
Yeah, there's little layers of not only milk chocolate, but some uncooked or unsweetened cooking chocolate. There's touches of, I think it's hazelnut. Small bits of maybe a spice, like an allspice, or maybe even a nutmeg.
Yeah, I'm getting some kind of maybe raisin.
Sure, there's some dark, dry fruit.
Yeah, kind of like a mini quad.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
We'll do quads later, don't you worry. All right, you want to taste it?
Let's do it. Cheers.
Cheers. Almost forgot to cheers. What a clean beer.
Yeah, it is. It's, I don't know if I can say simple yet complex. There's definitely layers of flavor, but the mouthfeel on this is very clean, It does have a somewhat of a lasting, almost like a chalky chocolate type of flavor to it. But up front, and you get these nice, really like layers of some of that chocolate that we picked up on the nose. It's not quite as sweet in the body as I felt it was on the nose. But then you really kind of get into that like a roasted, cleanly toasted nut flavor.
I feel like it's a little bit more bitter on the taste than it is on the nose, and the kind of the opposite of sweetness that you're talking about.
I just don't know that I would necessarily describe it as a bitter beer, but that bittering balance really comes through in the body.
Now, would that come through from the choice of hops, or maybe from the malts they use?
Well, it's a combination. Not only do they employ European malts, which typically will give this earthiness to it, but the fact that they use roasted malts, caramel malts and chocolate malts, that roastedness of the malts will actually lend a bit of a bitterness too. Now, it's a different type of bitterness than you get from the alpha acids in a hop, but bitterness nonetheless, as perceived by the palate. You can really understand why this one's a classic. You know, all the flavors are there. It's really a great representation of what the style really brings to the table. Complexity, yet ease of drinking as well.
Ease of drinking. I feel like it's a very approachable beer as well. Browns, as a rule, are pretty approachable. Sometimes if you get into some American styles, us Americans do a bunch of crazy things sometimes with beer. But browns, in general, I feel like are an approachable style. And in English browns especially, very approachable. You can be a newbie and still appreciate it. And at the same time, you can be someone who's pretty experienced with craft beer, and maybe you haven't had it in a while, but even going back to it is a very, very nice experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said really rings true. Approachable, just as a style in general. So, as you're taking care of your guests at the Brass Tap, this is a really good style to kind of get somebody to branch out of what they're normally drinking. If you have a guest that typically will drink, pale lagers or Vienna style lagers, maybe something like a Sam Adams Boston lager, this is really just a step or maybe a step and a half forward in terms of the palate progression for them. There's nothing that's really offensive or really out of the norm in terms of flavor profile, but it does carry some body, carries a little bit of weight, and as you can see, it's a darker beer, which oftentimes, even if just mentally, makes people think that they're really kind of stepping outside of their comfort zone.
That's true.
Which is, one of the things that Brass Tap is all about, is exposing people to styles of beer that they might not have tried before.
Yeah, and this is a great place to start with that. And it's good for you, right? It's organic. It's good for you.
Absolutely. So
that's what I'm going to believe.
If you're a vegan, you and all of your Grateful Dead, hippie-loving and fun-loving friends can get together and drink this and eat tofu and seitan all day long, and it'll be good for you. So.
And even if you're not, it's still a pretty dang good beer.
That's right. So, cheers, mate.
Cheers.